Raise your hand if you knew that Lionsgate was looking to potentially remake the cult classic movie, Cube. Okay, not everybody, but quite a lot of you. Now, of you guys raising your hands, how many of you knew that it was already out? Yeah, that's not surprising. The original Cube is a fantastic movie about a group of people trapped in a 3D death maze where the characters slowly turn against one another as they try to solve the clues laid out for them and escape the cube. The characters are super deep, the traps were horrifying in amazing ways, and the entire movie perfectly showed that you don't need a big budget to make something incredible. The film was popular enough to get a sequel that...
You know for sure we're in a prison, or are you just talking out of your ass?
I'm assuming that...
You know what they say about that?
wasn't good, and a prequel that...
Do you believe in God?
No.
also wasn't good, but was a vast improvement over the sequel. But then, in 2015, Lionsgate announced that they wanted to remake the original movie for modern audiences, which I think is pretty unnecessary. There's nothing really dated in the original movie except for the CGI, and that's not even that bad. But in 2021, we were finally graced with the glory of the Cube remake. I didn't know that this thing was real for over a year, and I only found out about it because I was looking up information about the original movie. But after learning about this movie's existence, my immediate thought was, wait, is it really that bad?
Yes.
I can quite confidently say that Cube 2 is a better movie. Yes, I'm actually saying that this movie is worse than the movie where Todd Howard dies having sex.
16 times the detail.
But now that we're all aware that this exists, it may surprise you to know that this isn't actually the remake that Lionsgate has been teasing since 2015. This is an independent remake made specifically for the Japanese market, and I can't find any information on it other than the distributor, cast, and director. I don't know what the budget was, or even the studio behind its creation. Now, the opening credits do showcase the name Shochiku, but looking them up, I found a bunch of films that they had a hand in their Japanese distribution, but didn't actually contribute to the making of the film itself. And I was eventually able to find a mention of Lionsgate, but it was only at the very tail end of the credits, which were all in Japanese, so my dumb American brain can't read them. Now, I do understand that remakes don't actually have to be shot for shot or even follow the same story beats, but I am going to be constantly referring back to the original movie to showcase why things work there, but not here. So if you want to remain completely unspoiled on the original movie, stop watching now, go watch it, and then come back. So now, without any further ado,
Let's just jump into it.
we start out with a man exploring his surroundings. He doesn't know how he got here or where here even is. He seems to be dead set on moving forward and passes directly into the room in front of him, wary about what he may find. As he passes into the following room, he notices that something is different from the rooms he's been in before. A blinking light goads him forward, but he elects to stay put, fearful of what may happen to him. And then he just gets Minecrafted. This opening scene conveys with no dialogue what the cube is. A giant 3D maze where entering the wrong room means certain death. But despite conveying the idea of the cube effectively, I think it's already a major downgrade from the original. In the opening of the original, we see the man actually waking up and taking in his surroundings. We see him checking multiple rooms and carefully trying to select the room he moves forward in. And when he gets cheese grated, it may be small, but we've built a connection to the character through mutual confusion. We as an audience are just as confused about the place he's in as he is. And his death is so much more impactful because we've come to sympathize with him even with zero dialogue. If you want another example of this that showcases the idea even better, in the first Saw movie, both the audience and the characters are not just figuratively left in the dark on their situation, but literally left in the dark as well. And they converse about their situation before they can even see what it is. In the remake, this guy just seemingly has already gone through the initial confusion and has made something of a plan. And while it's not a bad opening, it misses out on immediately building a connection with the audience. But we still do get the scene of a character waking up, it's just with the next character we follow, after we've already seen the cube and know that there's traps. But even then, instead of being confused and checking his surroundings, he kinda just sits there and shows how bad his ping is.
Huh?
We start to get introduced to our main cast here, but in order to fully talk about them, it's important to give background on why the original film was so special. The characters of the original were constantly butting heads because they had completely different personalities, and it felt extraordinarily real despite the insane circumstances. You have Quentin, someone who is dead set on keeping his head down and focusing on what's right in front of him. And as time goes on, he keeps trying to quietly sum up the worth of his allies when he thinks they aren't looking, and when he gets a chance to dump someone that he determines is dead weight, he doesn't hesitate. He slowly transforms from a headstrong leader to a vengeful psychopath by the end of the movie.
Trust me on this. It's my job to read people like an X-ray.
Worth starts out as a pure nihilist and has more information about the cube than anyone else, but he refuses to share that information because he believes that everyone in the cube is gonna die anyway, so it doesn't even matter.
What does it want? What is it thinking?
1 down, 4 to go.
But after he eventually is pressured into talking about it, he helps boost the morale of the group at their lowest moments by bringing attention to new information and actively helping the rest of the group escape, even at the cost of his own life. He goes from not caring about what happens to anyone or anything to caring enough to the point where he was willing to sacrifice himself for the sake of the others. Levin doesn't change all that much throughout the movie, but she is integral to solving the clues of the cube and finding a way out, and she's constantly preyed upon by Quentin.
A man and a woman, 2 halves of the equation. I take you down. The perfect key. I slip you in the lock.
Why don't you have a seat right over there for me, please?
Holloway is a conspiracy theorist.
All along my whole life, I knew it! I told you, Quentin, nobody's ever gonna call me paranoid again. We gotta get out of here and blow the lid off this thing!
But she provides emotional support to the group and attempts to help keep them calm and regulated, standing up to Quentin whenever he wants to go all survival of the fittest, and eventually through talking with Worth, allows him to understand why the people around him matter, and kickstarts his development before she's, killed by Quentin. Kazan is a mentally challenged man who Quentin only sees as a problem, but Holloway wants to protect him.
You're not leaving him behind.
He's unpredictable. When we get to the edge, we can come back for him, but he'll get somebody killed here.
They may have taken our lives away, but we're still human beings. That's all we've got left.
Later in the movie, it's revealed that he's actually a savant who's a vital part of solving the cube, and he's the only one to actually leave the cube in the end. And finally, Ren, an escape artist who teaches the rest of the group the simple rules of survival, trap detection, and helps push the group forward in a major way, before he gets his face melted off.
No, Brad!
You killed my father, you motherfucker!
Get him out!
And when he goes away, it means that the rest of the group is basically on their own without their tutorial NPC to guide them any further. Now, one cool thing about all these characters is that all the names are based off of famous prisons. San Quentin is a prison in California, Kazan is a Russian mental hospital, Ren is a French prison, and Levin and Worth both have their names as one half of Leavenworth, which is one of the first federal prisons established in the United States. And splitting up the name, I think, refers to the fact that the two of them have to work together in order to solve the cube, but Worth is just unwilling to help until late in the movie.
How do you map a point that keeps moving?
Permutations.
But now that we've talked about the original characters, let's move on to see what our cast is in the remake. Now, the main cast, I think, is all supposed to revolve around a theme of resentment, but there's some that don't follow that theme, so I don't know for sure. And while there are times where the group will butt heads and fight with one another, it's not because of clashing ideologies like in the original, it's more because there is that constant sense of, I already hate you before I even met you because of X reason. We We have Goto, who essentially starts out as the everyman of the group, but he hides a deep-rooted self-hatred for his past actions. He doesn't really butt heads too much with the group throughout the movie because his hatred is mostly internalized. Then we have Ochi, an early 30s convenience store worker who tries to be the force of positivity within the group, but knows he can't keep up the facade as they travel further into the cube and slowly begins to break down. He has a constant hatred for people who disrespect him for not being better off in life, considering he's still working a minimum wage job in his 30s. We have Chiharu, a 13-year-old middle schooler who harbors a deep resentment for adults in general. We have Ide, an early 40s mechanic who has potentially already found a way through the cube by untying his boot and using the laces as a string to check and see if a room is trapped, and kind of has a resentment for the people around him in general and openly admits he's making it to the end with or without the group. Later in the film, they find Ando, a corporate worker who initially believes the group is a rescue team and is grateful towards them, but when they let him know that they're just as lost as he is, he becomes more open about the fact that he hates people he perceives are beneath him. Whether they're people with lesser jobs, children, and, well, basically anyone. He actually believes himself to be a terrible person, but instead of wanting to improve, he is perfectly okay with being a terrible person.
You are a horrible person. That's what it says. A horrible person. We weren't even testing for that.
And finally, Kai, the girl. No, seriously, she's just the girl. She exists for the sole purpose of making this story not a complete sausage fest. For a majority of the movie, she's just standing there with a blank expression on her face. And whenever she does decide to speak up, she just says what's factually happening in the plot. Now, they do try, and I do mean try, to explain this aspect of her personality, and they hint at it with one of the first lines she says.
ところであなたたち何者ですか?
What are you?
But we'll get to that when we get to it. All of these characters, with the exception of the girl, sound generally interesting on paper, but the biggest problem with this movie is the fact that these characters barely ever converse with each other. The movie tries to invoke a sense of dread and despair by letting shots just linger to immerse you, but it doesn't work because after a certain point, it just becomes awkward silence. And the fact that these guys don't showcase their personalities makes it even harder to tell them apart when they don't even look visually distinct from one another. While Chiharu, Ando, and the girl, yeah, I'm just gonna call her the girl going forward, are all visually distinct from each other, Goto, Ide, and Ochi are all Japanese guys that are very similar in age, height, and physique. The only thing easily telling them apart is their hairstyles. And each of the other Cube movies, even Cube Zero, where the group barely matters because the story isn't about them, it's about the people running the cube, does this really well. They all have actors that are different races, genders, ages, heights, physical builds, hair color, even small things like how they wear their clothing can go a long way. And I'm not saying these characters look exactly the same, but I don't think there are enough differences to completely visually distinguish them. And it's made even harder when they're given zero dialogue showcasing their personality. But you don't have to worry about telling your characters apart easily, because the rooms change colors now. And I am not exaggerating when I say they barely talk to each other. They only ever bring up the topic of why they could have been put in the cube twice. Once at the very beginning, when Ochi asks Goto if he's committed any crimes, and once about halfway through the film, when the word punishment triggers Goto's PTSD.
But... do you want me to punish him?
No, don't do that. He's had enough.
Now, I don't like the fact that they showed the outside of the cube. The mystery is a big part of why the original movie worked. You never see the outside of the cube, even when Kazan escapes at the end of the movie, because the mystery allows you to keep thinking, is Kazan okay? What's actually out there? Is it actual freedom, or is the cube just part one in something bigger? Until Cube Zero actually explained what's at the end of the cube, and that Kazan most likely is not alright. But I can forgive this to a degree, because it's clearly an internal flashback of something that Goto deeply regrets and feels like he should be punished for. You know, as long as they don't do something dumb, like definitively confirming that that is actually the reason he's in the cube. The original movie is packed to the brim with characters constantly talking about the mystery they've been trapped in, and they all have different perspectives on each of the major questions. Why are they there? Who put them there? What even is it? How do they get out? Each character has a different answer to each of these questions, and the group dynamic is what made it engaging to watch. In this, rather than discussing anything, they're just going to keep dumbfounded looks on their faces and then just go along with whoever the writers have decided is going to be the one to lead the group for the next bit. And for most of the beginning of the movie, that's Ide. He's essentially the parallel for Ren. However, unlike Ren, Ide doesn't die in the first 15 minutes, leaving the group to fend for themselves. And the way the group truly learns how deadly the traps are is by finding the guy who got Minecrafted. The exposition in this movie is so long and drawn out. Everyone just stands there most of the time, not saying anything. And so much time is spent on literally nothing that the group doesn't even realize that the boot isn't an entirely reliable trap detection method until 27 minutes in, when they all just walk into a trapped room together. Now, this scene isn't bad. Ide is essentially the leader of the group at this point, and Goto is just a shell of anxiety. And when the trap starts going off, he just stands there, almost waiting to die, until Ide pulls him into the room below and starts reprimanding him for being an idiot. This is the kind of characterization I'm looking for. It has subtleties and good character dynamics, but how do they follow it up?
No fighting!
They do get the ball rolling for Goto to develop as a character and become more proactive, and it does get followed up on later, but it honestly feels like they hit the brakes before they could have started actually going somewhere. The group then figures out that if a room is marked with prime numbers, it means the room is trapped. But unlike the original, where the prime number theory was just a temporary solution, leading the group into a false sense of security and causing a major rift in the group after realizing the safety net they thought they had didn't actually exist, this is actually a reliable trap detection system. There are no deviations from this point forward. There is an hour left in this movie, and every single trap is avoidable from this point onward. And when they find this out, the girl just stands there and continues to be awkward.
She desperately wants her exterior self to appear calm. She's so focused on having this nonchalant disposition that she completely fails to realize her behavior doesn't match the situation whatsoever.
After a brief montage of the group making progress through the cube, they come across a room that's trapped and will activate if they make any noise. And instead of turning around and going back, they decide it's a better idea to keep moving forward through the trapped room and just not make any noise.
What is wrong with you? Are you actually this stupid?
Now, in the original, this was a big scene because Quentin had already started his descent into madness, and it's not fully clear whether he actually thinks it's a good idea or just wants to use it as an excuse to get rid of Kazan.
When we get to the edge, we can come back for him, but he'll get somebody killed here.
Kazan is a constant force that could potentially screw things up, and all of the characters working around him in pure silence is so intense, and it's heightened by the fact that they have to go downwards into the room, so if any of them slip and fall, that's it. They're dead. But in the remake, there's nobody trying to goad them into the room like Quentin in the original. Ide is just confident that they can do it, but nobody puts up any protests other than Ando going,
You serious?
There is no drop into the room, meaning they just have to walk across the floor for a second, and Chiharu may be a kid, but he's not stupid and he can keep his mouth shut. Hell, he's been doing that for the entire movie up to this point. The sound trap in the original was a huge contrast from the rest of the movie. The entire movie, the characters are constantly conversing with each other, and they traded that in for a scene of pure silence. But in this, there's barely any difference because the characters weren't even discussing stuff before. They add in suspense by Ochi being negligent, accidentally kicking Ando in the face, and then dropping his boot at the very end, leading to Ando getting a scratch on his leg, and he begins to fight with Ochi over this mistake.
I've made a severe and continuous lapse in my judgment.
A similar thing happens in the original when Worth calls out that a room is safe, and when Quentin goes in, finds out that it's actually trapped and escapes slightly injured. That scene makes him fully turn on Worth. So this is actually a good start to Ando fully turning against the group. Except Ando isn't the Quentin of the group. Ochi is. This scene, where Ochi legitimately made a mistake and Ando allows high emotions to get the better of him, is what starts Ochi's path to turning on the group. And his turn is hilarious because the room changes colors to reflect his current emotions. The original cube had rooms that had different colors that reflected different emotional states of the group, with the two most common rooms being white towards the beginning of the movie and darker reds as the movie goes on to showcase the deterioration of the group. But in this, all the rooms apparently have their RGB strips synced up to Ochi's brain. Oh, it wasn't being synced up to Ochi's brain, it was a countdown timer to when the trap would go off. The group then opens the door and they find the guy from the beginning? Okay, when they found Ren's body in the original, it was at their lowest point, realizing that after everything they'd gone through, they ended up right back where they started, and it breaks the group. Here, the group hasn't lost a single member, and they're all still mostly cooperative with each other. And finding this room this early should clue them into the fact that they haven't been going in circles and that the rooms move. In the original, it took time to realize the rooms were moving because they'd been turned around and taken time to stop and rest multiple times. And on top of that, emotionally, they were all screwed. Ren and Holloway both died at this point, and Quentin has already gone psycho. So this was a thing that kicks them while they're down, and it takes Worth becoming the voice of reason to get the group to realize that the rooms have been moving.
Listen to what I'm saying, there was a room there before.
Here, they've just been handed the biggest clue before we've even hit the halfway mark. The group doesn't even fully realize that the rooms are moving until they make it to the edge later in the movie, where they go, oh, they actually are moving? And maybe it's because of the language barrier, but the way the subtitles are listed, Ide says some vague stuff about running out of time, but nobody confronts him on this and asks him what he means. Nobody in the group is apparently paranoid enough to go, what did you mean by that? Do you know something we don't? It's extremely frustrating when you have a piece of media where the plot relies solely on the fact that the characters are stupid in ways that don't make sense. I'm not gonna pretend that Cube was some perfect masterpiece of filmmaking. It's just a generally good movie that relied on a good script, good actors, and good camera work to make up for its small budget and single room set. This remake is just taking elements from the first movie and going, yeah, we'll do that, without understanding why the moments worked. It feels like they took all the scenes from the original and then just threw a dart. So what scene are they doing next? As Chiharu is checking to see if a room is safe, he realizes that there's a prime number, but falls into the room when the cube starts moving. And yet they still don't realize that the rooms are moving. I love this scene for how stupid it is. It works like a video game where you see the boss lining up his shot so you get a chance to get out of the way. But in this, it's apparently impossible for these guys to get out of the way without somebody pushing them. Dies, which is definitely tragic. So far, Ide was the best character because he was the only one who didn't want to put up with the rest of the group's bullshit, and seeing him hop into the room to save Goto and Chiharu was honestly a tragic sacrifice, even if it was really stupid. There was an earlier scene that implied that Ide has people he's trying to get back to, but just doesn't want to open up to the group about it. So he had his legitimate motivations to get through the cube, but he gave them up for the sake of others. I wouldn't call this a full arc, but it's something at least. His death hits Ochi hard. Ochi has been the optimist the entire time, getting really excited whenever somebody made progress, but when Goto figures out that the numbers are coded to denote where they are in the cube, Ochi doesn't get excited over this information and falls into an extremely depressed state. But then the group just splits up because a non-trapped room just grows prison bars, and they don't even question this at all. You're feeling the awkward silences of this movie building up, right?
Well, it's just the whole point of like the first cube is that it's all about the group dynamic, and this one's like only two characters are gonna basically exist at the same time. Everyone else will just stand and watch.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, I did watch this movie with my friend Pixel. It wasn't my first time watching it, but it was his first time watching it. But we didn't actually think to start recording our reactions until this point. On one side, Chiharu, Goto, and the girl. And on the other, Ando and Ochi. Now, Ando and Ochi are the only characters so far that have been openly hostile towards each other. So you can probably guess where that's going.
Bravo, sis.
She's so nonchalantly doing it. He's not even, like, trying to hurt him.
Like, skulls are tougher than that.
Goto's group comes across room 999. They have figured out how to graph the room locations, and even though they don't fully know it at this point, they should know that the rooms are moving because they found Steve's body earlier. But the girl doesn't say anything. I cannot exaggerate how useless this girl is. She just stands around and doesn't say anything, and then when she has a chance to do anything that gives her value to the group, she just stays silent. Oh my god, this movie is so bad it's turning me into Quentin. The mini group then goes into a room that if I were in this situation, I wouldn't even think of going in here. I don't care if the room isn't prime. With the way the lights are pulsing, I wouldn't even dare.
Not for nothing, but like last time you got scanned, a laser tried to kill you, so I would like move.
I don't even know where to begin with how dumb this is. They just have a movie theater inside the cube.
The world's most immersive movie experience begins now.
And I'm sorry, but how the hell did the people who made the cube get this footage? Even if they went the route of Cube Zero and scanned their brains, Goto's flashbacks up until now have been from his perspective. But this one's taken from a third-person camera, so how does that work? Do they just have drones that are following random people so they can use them if they decide to take these people into the cube?
This is 4K! How did they get you in 4K?
This scene is meant to showcase why Goto has a hatred for himself, where instead of standing up for his little brother who is being heavily abused by their dad, he puts blame on his brother for not living up to their dad's expectations, and unintentionally pushes his brother to commit suicide instead of being able to save him. This scene wouldn't be awful if it were in a different movie, but in this, it's so out of place and hurts the overall story because it gives a definitive reason why the group is in the cube. In the original, the reason they were all in the cube didn't matter. The point was the character dynamics and how they all tore themselves apart trying to solve the death maze. But in this one, it's like they were all chosen and put in here with people they specifically wouldn't get along with to learn to become better people. And that would be fine if they were trying to take a different spin on Cube and go in that direction, but the only one to be shown a flashback like this is Goto. Nobody else has their past actions shoved in their face. If they wanted to go this direction, I think it could have worked, but they would have to go all the way with it, not just give the main character a moist critical response video and then have the characters all just stand around. And the scene that follows this is a perfect showcase as to why this movie is awful. I can talk about the character decisions and plot progression all I want, but this scene perfectly showcases the biggest problem of this movie.
Please fucking say something. I'm dying over it.
So Chiharu is apparently just done with the cube at this point, and after seeing Goto just let his brother die in the video, even though Goto is clearly torn up about it and understands he was wrong, Chiharu decides to game end by dropping 15 feet. But Goto saves him, revealing bruising on his arm, showcasing the fact that Chiharu's hatred for adults comes mainly from believing that adults are all going to stick up for each other rather than for kids that are potentially being abused by them. Chiharu and Goto, oh, and the girl, I forgot she was here, finally make it to the edge, where they see the rooms moving, which they already should have known was happening, but we've been past that by this point. But they determine that if they make it to room 999, that would equate to position 27, putting it outside of the cube. And after discussing it, the girl finally reveals that she came across the room earlier. They all just start making a beeline for the exit room, but not before they bump into an old friend.
Otsan!
If I'm being completely honest here, this is one thing I will actually give to the remake over the original. In the original, Quentin was thought to be dead and just randomly comes back and stabs Levin from behind right before they get out of the cube. Having Ochi come back earlier and try and reintegrate with the group even after committing murder isn't a bad idea, but they just screw it up by him not even trying to hide the fact that he's become a total psychopath. Oh, and somehow, despite the girl being the only one to know where the exit room is at this point, Ochi somehow starts leading the group and determines that the next room is safe and pushes for everyone to enter. It's blatantly obvious he's leading them into a trapped room, but nobody thinks to check for prime numbers, even though Chiharu is extremely suspicious of Ochi at this point. And this next scene is so awful that I feel like I need to break it down into chunks just to get through the problems with it. So the girl opens the door to the next room, and it's the exit room. Yay, they're about to get out. But instead of going, sweet, let's get into the exit room right now and discuss things when they don't have any chance of the rooms moving, Chiharu decides to stop and talk to Goto now about Ochi acting strange, while Ochi just stands around and looks like he's tripping balls before he just outright says that they're in a trapped room.
I think I might have killed some people.
And then Ochi just starts monologuing.
My daddy was not nice to me!
Seriously, what the hell is this guy talking about? This may have been an interesting moment, but all we got was Ando kicking him in the face by accident at the beginning of the movie, Ando wanting to leave him behind after he made a mistake, and then watched Ide die. So that's enough for him, apparently?
Your life is nothing. You serve zero purpose. You should kill yourself now!
In the original, it was clear that Quentin was a jackass from well before the movie started, and the cube basically sent him over the deep end when his life was on the line. And while that somewhat holds true for Ochi, he goes from targeting others for being mean to him to just wanting everyone to die, even after being nothing but purely optimistic even in the face of hardship for the first half of the movie. There's no gradual descent for him. He just gives up hope at a certain point and decides to become a serial killer. When Worth hit pure nihilism, he kept it internalized and put the survival of the others in the group above his own survival. But for Ochi, I think Pixel said it best.
I'm gonna make my nihilism other people's problem.
The room starts changing color, so I guess the chip in Ochi's brain started back up again, and Goto starts calling Ochi out for his messed up philosophy. But Ochi basically goes, what about it, and calls Goto out for his past actions.
Technically speaking, he's not really a murderer.
But there's just one major problem. Ochi didn't see the video. Goto never talked openly about his flashbacks, and even if he took that one bit where it was confirmed that Goto had guilt for his past actions, how the hell does Ochi know that it was even about life? And even beyond that, no, Goto isn't a killer. What he did was unbelievably wrong, but he didn't willingly take the life of another human being.
So what's the girl doing? Well, this is just...
Yeah, exactly. She's just standing there in the exit room.
Wait, really?
And as a reminder, they're standing in a trapped room. Chiharu rushes at Ochi and tries to tackle him, but Ochi just sends him into the timeout corner and then starts to strangle Goto. Now, there's a major problem with this. Not only is Chiharu just giving up when he could at least try to distract Ochi and let Goto get back up to throw a punch or two, not only is the girl just standing in the exit room doing literally nothing to help, and not only are they standing in a trapped room without the traps going off, but Ochi isn't even using his legs to hold down Goto's arms in any way. So Goto's arms and hands are free, and he could just go for Ochi's eyes. But no, what happens is Chiharu gives words of encouragement and turns the movie into a shonen anime series.
What is this shonen bullshit?
The trap finally goes off after Goto stands up to Ochi after how long? Yeah, they were in the room for over 8 minutes before the trap went off.
If I only had a brain.
So Goto and Chiharu make a run for the exit room, but the room has already started to move, and Goto pushes Chiharu inside, sacrificing himself for the sake of another person's life, clearing his conscience from his past mistakes. Chiharu and the girl make it to the end, and Chiharu makes a vow to himself to change for the better, realizing that not all adults are abusive, and begins to head off, while the girl stays inside the cube. Yeah, remember how I said they lazily try to explain the girl's actions in this movie? She is the cube.
That doesn't actually, like, explain any of her actions throughout the film.
Oh, but no, they were setting it up because, like, she was emotionally stunted and didn't really say anything. When none of the characters said anything!
That credits music, though.
That does not fit.
No, not really.
Now, there is still one final plot point left to mention.
Major fracture detected.
When Worth is left in the cube at the end of the movie, we know that he's going to die soon. But in this remake, Goto being alive is framed almost like a twist. Like, he is alive!
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
I stand by what I said at the beginning, and honestly believe that Cube 2 is a better movie. Sure, Cube 2 is batshit insanity that makes little to no sense 90% of the time, with too many characters to keep focus on, but it is a fun kind of bad. And I will always take a movie that's bad but entertaining over something that's generally of a better quality, but has nothing but the bare minimum to be called serviceable. And serviceable is about the kindest word I can give this remake. Lionsgate is still apparently planning to do their own remake of the first Cube movie, and maybe that will be better, but the original film was already fine. I don't really see too much reason to actually go back and redo it. But even if the eventual in-house remake is really good, the Japanese remake is horrendous. But as bad as this movie is, it is so much fun to make fun of. If you go in looking for a good movie, you are not going to get it. But if you're looking for a movie you and your friends can have a great time shitting on, honestly, this isn't a bad option to torture your friends with. Wait a second. They didn't say booted at any point in this movie. Hello, everyone. I saw this movie and instantly started writing this script because I didn't see anyone else really talking about it in depth, and I desperately wanted to talk to people about it. I wanted to make another video close in style to my Tron video, but utilizing the feedback I got from that, especially from my friends, and also crank up the jokes to the extreme. So if you liked it or have any criticisms that can help me improve, please let me know. I would love to hear them. Anyway, now that this is over, I need to force myself to get back to work analyzing the show where a head pat causes characters to nut so hard they turn inside out. Thank you guys for watching, and take care.